So welcome, Bob. And thank you for taking our invitation. I'm very excited about having you on as a guest, mainly because not only have I known you for, I was trying to work it out, it's about 10 years now.
A little bit more.
Yeah. Longer than that. Yeah. And what I always loved about the conversations that you had was how you thought about business, strategy, leaders, people, culture. And you taught me a few things over the years that we spent together.
I doubt that.
Yes, you did. Well, what you got me to do is to think about how we did some things. And it actually, when opportunities came up, Jay would often say, I wonder what Bob would say about that. And we remember it. And you actually did work with a client of ours that actually they've gone on to great things because of the thinking that you brought to their business. So I'm interested in, how did you end up and what led you to being in construction, concrete, all that stuff, and maybe like a little potted history of your career?
Interesting. I studied as a metallurgist and I actually failed matric or year 12 and basically had to go to work. My parents couldn't afford to send me back to school for another year or to send me on to university or anything. So I really fell into metallurgy. I was looking for a job as a cadet, someone who would pay me while I learnt and send me to school. And I found this company that offered me a job as a cadet metallurgist. And, then I studied part-time at RMIT to get my qualifications. And that company happened to be manufacturing screws, nuts and bolts and screws, for a wide range of industries. But at the time, it was a family-owned Australian company, and it got taken over by a big US corporation. And as the US corporation gained more and more shareholding and control of the business became more focused and ended up being the biggest bit of the business was construction, was selling screws for holding on roofs. And the business really boomed after the Darwin cyclone. And at the time of the Darwin cyclone, I was the quality manager in the lab. And we did, we were doing testing on roofing and trying to figure out why screws failed and all that sort of stuff.
That would have been very interesting, because that was huge, what happened in Darwin.
Yeah, all the roof sheets came off in the cyclone in Darwin. And if you see cyclones today, the roof sheets don't come off. The whole roof might come off, but it's got the structure with it, so a different set of problems. But so it was like trying to figure out how do you make buildings cyclone proof or to better withstand cyclones. And we were really at the leading part of that research, along with a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah.
But that really started me in the construction industry. And, I moved out of quality and went into sales and marketing and took various management positions, really more because the opportunities came up rather than it being a plan. I was lucky enough to have some mentors in the business that, saw things that in capabilities or something that gave me opportunities to do things that I would probably not have thought of doing myself. And through that process, you develop and you continue to follow the opportunities as they come up, So
that's interesting. It's like someone saw in you a spark, let's call it.
Or a capability. A capability. Yeah.
Now, if you think of yourself as you grew as a leader, how did you know someone had that? Because you've grown some pretty extraordinary leaders.
Yeah. I think I've always been pretty much a hands-off sort of boss and, kind of believe in you give people enough rope, they'll either hang themselves or they'll be successful. And, I don't mean that in in the sense of kicking them off the end of the pier and they sink or swim. But, you give people direction and help and advice and, training and so on. But, hopefully they understand what you're trying to achieve. And they understand they're part of that, and then they can go off and do it. And I think that certainly in my development, I was given a whole heap of trust, given responsibility at times when I probably didn't really think I should have been given responsibility, but people gave me trust. And so I learned that to give other people trust. And so, try and give people the boundaries and the fences, and then let them go off and go and do their thing. And if the communication is good, it's not blind trust. It's not trust without control. But it's trust in a set of boundaries, within a set of guidelines, and then having appropriate systems in place to be able to at least pick up the inklings that something might not be right, or something's getting off the rails, and looking not necessarily at results, but at the trends, so you can pick up what's going wrong before it's actually a disaster.
So say more about that, because I think a lot of people just keep looking at results. They don't actually look at the whole journey, hey?
Well, and probably the easiest way to think about that is, if you're running a business, and at the moment I do work in the precast concrete industry. I'm still involved in that industry. And for a precast concreter, most of their work comes from bidding on tenders. So if you've got a full shop today, and the lead time for a job might be 3 to 9 months in terms of how much work you have to do as a business, you're bidding on tenders for work that's going to be in your factory in 9 months or 12 months time. So looking at what your sales are today is no indication at all of what your business is going to be doing in the future. So you need to be monitoring, what's your tendering rate, what's the value of tenders that you're submitting, and what's your success rate on tenders, because that's going to tell you what your sales success is going to be in 6 months, 12 months, time. And I think that's far more important than what are your sales today, what are your sales tomorrow, or this month and last month, because that's really an indication of the work that you did 6, 9, 12 months before.
So that whole lag conversation.
And by the time your sales now are going down, it's too late to do anything about it, because even if you up your tendering rate right now, it's going to be 9 months or 12 months, 6 months, whatever, before it starts to affect the actual business. So if you're in a hole, you're going to be in a hole for a long time. And clearly some businesses have longer lead times, longer lag times than others. But the same things are true. If you're not quoting business and your normal business comes in by quoting people, if you're not quoting business, your sales in some period in the future are not going to be up to the requirement. And most businesses that I've been involved in, senior management focus on last month's results. And in many cases, you don't. Fortunately, I've worked in some businesses where this isn't true, and they are much closer to the time. But in lots and lots of businesses, particularly small to medium-sized enterprises, they don't even get to see their financial results until the end or over the next month, or even halfway through the following month, 6 weeks after they've happened.
Yes.
So how can you make corrective decisions if you're not seeing what your level of performance was until 6 weeks after it's happened? It's just,
that's kind of like a bit insane, isn't it?
It's completely insane.
Yeah.
And there are even, even large public companies, and I think bureaucracy is even worse, but even large public companies, they're not seeing their results until 3-4 weeks after the end of the month, whereas I worked for a big American company for a long time, and the results were available 5 days after the end of the month. There was a lot of pressure on the accounting to do that, and everyone says you can't possibly do it. But if that's what's demanded of the business, then you find the ways to do it. You put the systems in place to enable you to do that, And it's not impossible. I mean, there are lots and lots of companies in the world that are producing results that quickly.
So if you look at the businesses that you've run and you look at some of the businesses that were failing and you took them over, I know that, is that one of the first things that you clean up? It's like, I actually need to know what's going on around here.
And in many cases, the leaders of those businesses, they don't have the information they need to be able to make the decisions. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm looking at the results, the sales results for last month, and I'm looking at it in the third week of this month. But that's not telling you where you're going to be next month because it's the quotes.
Yes.
If you didn't do enough quotes last month, you're not going to be there. You've got no chance of getting there for next month. And so monitoring those other indicators in the business so you can understand what are the drivers of the business and monitor the drivers, not the results.
Okay, I mean, talk more about the drivers, because I know we've had these conversations a few times and it really did turn my head around and go, okay, what are the drivers of my business and how do I change what I'm doing? So let's just talk about the concrete business, because that's the one that you've spent the last 30 odd years in. Like, what are the drivers in a business like that?
Well, I mean, the overall driver is the level of construction that's going on in the marketplace. So if you're leading a business that's in the construction industry, depending on which part you're in, whether you're in housing or commercial or infrastructure, you can get a good indication of where the market's going 6, 12, 18 months ahead, because there are economists out there telling us all the time, where the market's going. So if you're in housing and housing is going down and it's predicted to be going down next year by 10 or 15%, well, you need to be adjusting your business before you get there to do that. If it's going to be going up by 10 or 15%, then if you want to take advantage of that and grow your business because the market size is growing, then you need to be putting the things in place now, because when the market finally gets there, you're not going to have time to put them in place. You have to create the extra capacity in your business sometime beforehand so that you can fill that capacity when the market gets there.
So it's all that like forward planning.
Yes, absolutely.
How come people don't do it nowadays?
I really don't understand that.
It's not happening, I can tell you.
Well, as I said, I work for a big company and it was part of the process. Every year we had to update our long-range plan, and then we had to do 6 months later, we had to do our annual budget. And the annual budget was stacked up against the long-range plan. Did it make a logical connection? This is the long-range plan, what we're going to do over the next 3 or 4 years. Does what you're putting in your annual budget actually support that, or is it going in a different direction? And you're not writing that long-range plan every year, but every year you're looking at it and reviewing it and updating it and modifying it based on the things that have changed, or you might have been more successful than you thought. So if your long range plan is to be twice the size you are now, and then at the end of the first year you're 75% bigger, well then the long range plan isn't relevant anymore, because what are you going to do? Do nothing for the next 3 years because you already got to the goal. But you need to go through that thinking process and that strategic process, because if you don't actually have a purpose in a business, then nobody in the business understands what you're trying to achieve. So you have to have a purpose. Call it an objective or whatever, but it's really, what's the purpose of the business? Why are we here? Is it just to make money for the shareholders, or is it? That's
boring.
Well, and I mean, that in some cases that might be the purpose of the business, but in other cases, it can be set. The purpose can be set by the shareholders or the senior management. It's, we want to grow the business. Well, if you want to grow the business, you actually have to be thinking about how do you grow the business, and does growth mean just growth, or does it mean profitable growth, or does it mean growth in profit or growth in sales? And
so say more about that, because a lot of leaders they go, I want to grow, and then I go, where, how, what? So most people don't ever, what are the questions that people need to ask themselves if they're going to go down this road in leadership? Like, what the heck?
Why do you want to grow?
Yeah.
What is it that you want to achieve by having an objective to grow. You know, and if you answer that question, then everything else flows logically from that. You know, I've never really understood the tech sector, but I could never understand why, you know, the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Microsofts and Googles and so on, their objective was more and more customers, and it didn't matter that they were losing money.
Yes.
You know, so they've all seemed to have turned the corner and be making money today, but you know, that takes a level of faith and belief that goes way past my capability to believe that stuff.
Scary.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more logically based out.
We're concrete.
Yeah. So, but you know, if you don't have a purpose, it's like, well, what are we doing? You know, and if you can't express as a leader, if you can't express that purpose, well, then no one else in the business is going to know, and they're more than likely all likely to have a different idea. And if everyone's got a different idea of what it is you're trying to achieve, well, you're not going to be really achieving very much because everyone's, you know, doing something different. They're not working as a team to actually.
So say more about how when you've got the purpose and what you're doing and why you're doing it, and how does that allow you to build team and culture? Because that's like has been your thing a lot of times, is putting that structure together.
Clearly having the right people is important, and I think I've been fortunate over my working life to have found some very good people. And my experience is that when you find good people and you treat them well and you trust them and support them, and you're developing a business, it's actually fun. And people continue to be engaged and continue to work because it is fun. And it's a stimulating environment. If it's stimulating me, it's stimulating other people. You know, you spend a lot of your life working. If it's not fun, why are you doing it? It doesn't make sense, you know. So I've used the analogy many times that a business is like a sailing boat in a race. You know, you've got a group of people on the boat. No individual can do everything that needs to be done by themselves. Everybody has to have a job. Everybody has to be looking out for other people, because if people fall off, you want to get them back. You know, and things happen quickly. Things happen that are not necessarily to plan. You know, the weather and other boats and other things going on, you can't actually say this is exactly what's going to happen. So people have to be able to react to the moment and, you know, look after their other team members, because it can be a dangerous environment if things get out of control. And so people need to know what they're doing. Everyone knows what you are trying to do as a team, and that's, you might not be able to win the race, but at least the aim is to finish the race and to do as well as the very best you can. And so the objective is clear. Everyone understands what you're trying to achieve, and various people have jobs to do, and other people are looking out for them. And it's no different in a business environment once you have a defined purpose. If you don't
going over there,
if you don't have a defined purpose, no one knows where they're going. You know, and you know, again, if you look at the sailing analogy, it's a team, but there's one captain, and you know, everyone can give input to the captain, but the captain makes the decision, and then as a result of the decision, everybody does what they have to do to make that happen. You know, if everyone in the boat said, "Well, we disagree with the captain's decision," it'd be chaos. You know, you wouldn't achieve anything. You know?
Have you ever had that place where someone, the word I use is they challenge you for leadership, and how do you manage yourself when that's going on?
Well,
because that happens.
You have to be able to listen to people, and you can't. You can't be arrogant enough to think that you know everything. Clearly, there are people like that.
Who think they know everything.
Yeah, Donald Trump would be one of them. But
and Musk, you know, they're in a little party by themselves.
Yeah, that's right. So, but I mean, you don't know everything, and you have to be. You know, none of us can be completely the expert in every particular field that you're involved in. And so you need other expertise, and you need to be able to listen and trust people. But you also need to be able to smell the rat. It's like, well,
Nice.
yeah,
There are rats.
well, I mean, when I unfortunately, I'm an incredibly logical person, and
Unfortunately or fortunately?
unfortunately, but if it doesn't make logical sense, then it probably doesn't make sense.
So we could extrapolate on that one, because you think that's logic. I think that's emotional intelligence.
Well,
So if it doesn't make sense,
yeah,
and you can actually go bang, 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 that doesn't make any sense. And why would we do that? That's power. And yet you go, oh, that's because I'm logical. Well, my experience of most people who are emotionally intelligent, they actually are highly logical. They're not all over the shop like fairies or something. You sound like there's something wrong with you. And I go, man, my emotions can absolutely derail my business.
Well,
But when I go logical...
I'm not suggesting that there's something wrong with me because I'm logical.
Yeah.
I personally have found that a strength for me personally, because the disadvantage is it means that you don't necessarily make decisions on an emotional basis, and sometimes maybe you should. But in business, emotion can be a bad thing, because emotion, in my experience, tends to make you not look as critically at the facts. And, if you're ignoring the facts, then, maybe you're not making the best decisions. So, I mean, you can't always know everything.
No.
But at least the decisions you make should be based on your best information, the best facts you have at the time, and the logical extension of those facts in the decision-making process.
Could you consider that the fact that you are logical means that you actually ask questions that seek out what the heck, are we making an emotional decision, or are we making a good decision that maintains the business and grow it? Because your job, as you have led and been a general manager and an MD and all kinds of things, your job is to make sure that you protect this business
as best as possible. Yes.
And yeah, I'm sure you'll make mistakes.
Well, everybody makes mistakes, and I've always been fond of saying, if you don't make mistakes, you're not taking any risk, and if you're not taking any risk, you're not getting anywhere. Because that's how we, as humans, that's how we learn. When you make the same mistake 3 or 4 times, then that's a problem, and it means you are ignoring the facts. You're not being logical about what you're doing. I mean, we did this last time and it hurt, so why are we going to do it again? So you build up your personal experience, whether it's at a personal or emotional level, physical level from doing recreational activities, or it's a business thing. You learn from experience what works and what doesn't work, and you learn some mistakes you make can have very small consequences, and other mistakes you make can have very big consequences. And so you should be considering the risks, as well as, you don't have to be right every time. But if it's a really big risk, it's like, if I mess this one up, we're going to be completely gone. Maybe you should be a little bit more reticent about that. If it's, if we mess this up, we're going to upset some people, but really it's not going to affect the sales, or it's not going to affect the bottom line. Well, it's just going to hold us back. We're not going to be going where we wanted to go quite as quick. You can probably afford to take a little more risk. You can make the decision on a little less facts. So experience, like for me, I often think about in business, experience mitigates a lot of your risk. Knowledge mitigates the risk. I've always found that I gain more knowledge from experiencing things than I do from reading it in the book,
Yeah.
or on a podcast or something. But
Yeah.
I accept that other people learn in different ways. So I don't think it's necessary that you have experience. I think it's necessary you have the knowledge.
Okay, so knowledge for you is about the thinking that you do about it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the doing of it.
Yeah.
So
And learning the lessons that brings. And hopefully the lessons are going to be positive ones and it's going to be success.
Yeah.
And you can then build on that success and go and refine it or repeat it. And,
tell us.
well, I was at a conference last week or the week before. And there was a presenter there, because it's a small to medium-sized enterprise forum. And there was a presenter there that was talking about, managing better and so on. And she said some things that were, for me, they were like, that's so obvious. Because that's how we learned how to run the business.
Yeah.
Because we're part of a large organisation, they give you training and they introduce you to tools that you can use and so on. But just a very simple thing is, if you codify the way you make a successful sale,
Yes.
And you train every salesperson to do it that way, well, then you're going to be more successful than allowing every salesperson to make up their own mind how they make a successful sale. So when you can get the team of salespeople to be working together to figure out what's the best way of making a successful sale, and then codify that so the whole team does it, then you're going to be more successful. And
That's
then
pretty obvious.
Yeah, but nobody does it. Nobody does it.
I do know that some of my clients, they don't, their sales team are just to run riot.
Yeah. And, in the businesses that I've run, we have codified how do you make a successful sale? How do you run a successful territory? How do you target the customers that are going to be worthwhile? How do you figure out who those customers are? What are the characteristics of the successful customer for you? If you're trying to sell rabbit food, you don't want to be going to dog kennels. I mean,
And people do, though.
but that's what happens. They do. If you're a wine and spirits salesman, do you really want to be visiting the little next door cafe that sells 10 glasses of wine at lunchtime every day? Or do you want to be finding a successful venue that maybe only operates 5 days a month, but when they operate, they buy crate loads of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's, if you don't understand what it is you're trying to achieve, I mean, do you want $1,001 sales or do you want one $1,000 sale? And how much effort is involved in the $1,001 sales versus how much effort is involved in the $1,000 sale?
So that's all that strategy stuff that you've talked to me about before. So, and one of the things that I did learn from you all those years ago was that strategy is in the numbers.
Well, at the end of the day, yes.
And like, so how do you decide what that is given the numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, so the amount of effort that's required to achieve something is reflected in the amount of money you have to spend to achieve it. So, if there's a whole heap of effort required, then it needs more resources and more money to achieve that. And therefore the benefit that you're going to get from it at the end needs to be considerably greater than it would be if you had put less effort in. So it comes back to that whole thing at the start. If you don't have a purpose, you can't logically, work out where you want to go. If the purpose is to just remain in business and make a decent profit for everybody, for the shareholders and give them a nice return check every year, then you might organise the business differently because you down resource it, you work on improving the customer experience without it costing you anything. But if you want to grow, then you can't take that approach. You have to be investing in growth, which means finding new customers. It means finding new business. And so then, as I said, do you want to have 10 salesmen all chasing around trying to find, $10 transactions, or do you want to have one salesman who's chasing around trying to find a $100,000 or a $10,000 transaction? And obviously there's a different level of resource, there's a different level of return, and then it's, are there $10,000 opportunities out there? Is the first logical question, because if there isn't $10,000 opportunities, there's no point in trying to chase them. But if they're definitely there, then how do you identify them, and how do you successfully convert them? And if you've converted one, then you've got an answer to some of those questions, which you, by codifying and training, and you can teach everybody else how to do it, right? And therefore improve their rate of success, and therefore grow the business. It's,
Bob, how come, there's this whole, it's like even when I was young and you were young, we were around the same age, it's like you actually had learned certain things. There seems to be this whole, we'll get rich quick and then we'll do this and then we'll sit on the beach and do whatever and drink pina coladas. So tell me, what do you see that any aspiring or even current executive, what is the thing they're not thinking about that was kind of our bread and butter when we were young?
So I think that I think that the world's been turned a bit upside down.
Say some more about that.
Well, I was just reading recently the book about the big collapse in the US, and how a very small number of smart investors made a whole heap of money shorting the market, and pretty much everybody else lost their pants. And I think the world has changed since I was in my late teens and early 20s and 30s, where you achieve things by hard work, by consistently working hard and and being successful in your own right. It seems like the world has become a place where you gamble, and you gamble with other people's money, and you can make yourself a lot of money and then go and do nothing for the rest of your life.
Is that really true, though?
Well,
it's like it's a pipe dream.
Well, I think it is for a very, very small percentage.
Okay.
It's the same as there are only a very, very small percentage of athletes that are right at the top of the tree.
Yes.
But they're the ones that get all of the publicity.
Yes.
All of the people that have spent years of their life training to, be at the top of the athletics tree, or it doesn't matter what sport they're in. They've spent years training so they can be a footballer, and they never actually make it to the top level football.
Yes.
Because, only a very, very small percentage can, it's just a pure game of numbers. If there are 100 football teams, there can only be, 10,000 players. It's just, and yet there's a huge population of people trying to.
So how many GMs and CEOs and MDs were there in the businesses that you led?
Well, at one point
there was only one, you.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't get.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you may be the captain of the boat, right? So you're the captain of that boat, and only the captain can sit in that seat.
Yep. You can only have one. And
you want dissension?
Yep.
Start putting two people in there.
And the bigger the business, if you've got a business that employs 10,000 people, there's still only one person at the top, and there's still only maybe, 10 people in the leadership team.
Yes.
So it's still a very, very small percentage of the overall. So not everybody can be, can be at the top. And it means that, the best people should be there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not always the case, but that should be the case.
Yeah.
And the best businesses are the ones that have the best people there. The ones that are not out for themselves, that are out for the value of the business and the, making sure the rest of the team is looked after as well. It's, I very much believe in, that we should all share in the spoils, not the few at the top that have the money should make all of the money and the rest of us should be
beholden.
Game.
Be so grateful.
We did leave the feudal system several hundred years ago, and hopefully we're going to stay away from it. But this whole sort of aspect of gambling, making big bets to achieve big outcomes, the reality is a very small percentage of those bets come off.
Yeah, and a lot of people are over that.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, this whole influencer digital game it's just another level of craziness. That someone can make a living from expressing their opinion and everyone else paying for it doesn't make any sense to me at all. But
it's a really interesting thing because it's like at what point is what you say, does it add value? Does it make a difference for someone else? And if you don't, then can you just be quiet? Can you shut up?
Yeah, I mean, so you think that this thing is the best thing since sliced bread, but if it really is the best thing since sliced bread, you're not going to have to plug it endlessly to convince everybody else that it is. If it is a good device or a good thing or whatever, then it will be successful in its own right if it's made available. I just.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hanging out in the influencer scenario for 36 years, and that whole conversation about why are we still here 36 years later? Because I think we created a good product and it made a difference and it added value.
Yeah.
So, and just doing this is a big confront for me. It's like, Jennifer, you do a podcast. I go, what the hell? So all of that stuff comes up for me. So I only want to have people like you on that can actually add value to anyone that listens to this. And if they're aspiring leaders or current executives, some of the things that you've just said, it got me excited even. I go, okay, you've got to think about this stuff constantly when you want to build a business.
And it's, it's you build a story of success and then you grow, you use that to grow, and then you incrementally add extra little bits, which incrementally keeps you moving forward. And, if someone comes along and says you should go back and do what you were doing at the very start, it's like, hang on, really? I mean, we already showed that didn't work.
Yes.
Because we're doing it this way.
Yeah.
So really, do we want to go back and do it that way? And unfortunately, I have seen that happen where you've got a business that's developed a certain way and it's been successful, and a new leader comes in and goes, no, we're not going to do it that way anymore. We're going to do it this other way, and they destroy the value of the business because they've destroyed the underlying processes, the underlying methodologies and so on, and that changes the culture. And then the culture comes from the top.
Yes.
So
culture starts with the executive.
Yeah.
And if that's not a good, healthy culture, then it cannot exist in the rest of the business.
Well, that's right. I mean, you might have pockets of bad culture even when you've got good people and good culture at the top. But if you've got bad culture at the top, then there's no chance that you're going to have a successful culture throughout the rest of the business. So, it just doesn't happen.
So tell me about some of the mentoring and succession planning. Like, what does it take? You've got decades of experience under your belt. How do you see for leaders about passing on knowledge, the structured approach to growing and developing people?
Well, for me, it was, I've never been a person that wants to keep doing the same thing for the rest of my life, or for 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, even as you lead a business, when you start off, you're doing a whole range of different things. Some of them that you enjoy and some of them that you don't. And frequently, the bits of it that you really enjoy are the bits where you spend the least amount of time. So, you know, it seems like a logical extension to me that you find other people that can do those bits better than you can, or that are going to have fun doing them. I mean, you know, I can do accounting, but I hate it. You know, so you get an accountant, you know, then I can read the numbers, but I don't have to do the work.
Yeah.
And you find someone who's passionate about doing that and can do it well and can do it better than you and much more efficiently. And so you could take that little bit out of your life, and that gives you more capacity to do more of the things that you enjoy doing. And as you move through and you get rid of more and more of the things that you have to do, but you don't really enjoy them, or they're not really stimulating, then that gives you more capacity personally to grow, and it gives you more capacity to grow the business, and it gives you more capacity to mentor other people. You know, so you get other people to do that, you know, and you develop the means of being able to make sure that they're doing it properly and that they're giving the right information and it's accurate, and you know, that there are checks and balances in place and all those sorts of things. And then as the business grows, you grow. I mean, when you start a business and it's your own business and you employ 3 people, I mean, you have to do everything. You know, you have to be the accountant, you have to be the bookkeeper, you have to be the person that takes the orders, you have to be the person that does the invoicing, you know. Well,
And then you have to deliver it too.
yeah, well, you might have to be the storeman as well, you know. And, you know, once the business gets to, you know, 30, 40, 50 people, you better not be doing that stuff, because, you know, that's not an appropriate use of your time. If that's what you want to be doing, then you shouldn't be running a business.
Yeah.
You should be getting someone who can run the business for you, that enables you to do that bit of the things that you want to do. Yeah, and as the business grows, the complexities of the business grow, and the difficulty in how do we now grow. It's, you know, if you've got a business that's $1 million, you know, it's much easier to grow that business by another $1 million than it is to grow a $100 million business by $100 million, right? Same amount of increase in terms of percentage, but it's a whole heap harder to do.
Yeah.
And so the complexity of how you do that, and, you know, it needs more time. It needs more strategic thinking. It needs more, you know, measuring your actions, trialing and error, and, you know, better identification of opportunities or whatever, which you don't need to do when you're right down the bottom. And so as the business develops and as you bring people in to do other bits, that frees up your own time to go and explore some of these other things, which for me, I've enjoyed the challenge at every level.
Yes.
But, you know, and I can still go back and do the accounting if I have to do it, if it's my own little business.
It's not fun.
But it's not what not what stimulates me, and that type of activity, you know, those more administrative activities that are very, very necessary in a business, they're not the ones that, you know, that I find particularly stimulating. It's much more the thinking and the strategy, and then the analysis, and, you know, analysis of all sorts of things. You know, as I said, you know, you need to understand your markets, you know, because what you want to achieve has to be matched by what's available. You know, you can't, if you're the biggest business in the marketplace, to grow at 1% might be incredibly difficult. If you have 95% of the market, to grow your business 1% is going to be very, very hard.
Yes.
If you've got 1% of the market, to grow your business by 100% is going to be much, much easier, you know. So you have to understand the environment that you're working in, and as the business becomes bigger, those things become more important, because you're more of a piece of the pie, and so you know, the whole thing needs to be thought about differently.
So it's it's about the constant process that what I hear from you of, like if your business grows, you've got to grow with it. You can't still be the storeman and the accountant.
No, absolutely. Well, you can.
You can.
But you won't.
You better put in someone else that's going to do that other job because you want to be the storeman and the accountant.
And if you're the owner of the business, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be the storeman and the accountant and stuff, but you better get a good team around you who can do all those other things and who can provide the direction and so on. It's not very often that you find very successful business people that are operating in the administrative side of the business. It's not in partnerships. It happens. You've got the leader who can see the future and chasing the future, and you've got a nice, stable, steady partner behind that's making sure the machine runs, and you collect the money and all that stuff. And those sort of partnerships can work very, very well.
Yes,
but I don't think you can be that successful if that's your bent. If your administrative bent is that's it.
Yeah. So what has kept you vital and alive, and the things that you've done that actually keeps your mind stimulated, keeps your body in good shape, all of that stuff?
I wouldn't say my body was in good shape anymore.
Reasonable shape.
Well, I think you've got to remain active.
Yeah.
I've always been involved in a range of outdoor activities. And I think that's important. At this time of my life, I'm involved in sailing and extensively, and I ski, snow ski, and they require a certain level of physical fitness and definitely a level of mental awareness. And I think that by continuing to do that sort of stuff is what keeps you alive. What keeps you doing it. I sort of subscribe to the idea of if you don't use it, you lose it, and I think that that's both mentally and physically. So,
absolutely.
I still enjoy being mentally stimulated by being involved in various projects and associations and so on, and I don't have to do it. It's
fun.
It's fun,
I remember you saying to me years ago, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And I do have it's fun, and I want to do it with people that I enjoy doing it with. I'm not going to work for or work with people that I don't have any respect for anymore. Once you retire, you don't have to do what other people say. So you have the luxury of saying, no, I'll only work with the people that I enjoy and that we can have fun together with. So that's not necessarily the case when you're working, unfortunately, but would be nice if it was.
Yeah. What about the whole thing for any aspiring leader today, someone who's coming up and, they're in their 30s and 40s and they go, I want to do this. What would you tell them they need to watch out for and look out for and be aware of and be mindful about?
Other people. Yeah. Unfortunately, again, in my experience, unfortunately, vast majority of people maybe not as nice as they look on the surface. I think you get rewarded by the way you act.
Yes.
And I won't say I've always acted with the greatest integrity or the greatest thought for other people, but I think that when you're honest and truthful and you work with integrity and you have a set of values that you stick by, then it does serve you well in the long run. And if you're a cheater or you're passive aggressive or you're always trying to best the other person, at the end of the day, you'll pay the price for that. unfortunately, it takes a long time for some people to be found out. But
yes,
you know, I think my advice would be, you know, try and make sure that you're working in a team of people that have the same sort of values as you do, and that you gather those type of people around you, whether above or below. That you look for, you know, if you're taking a new job, be sure that you're going to enjoy the culture that you're going into. You know, it shouldn't only be them interviewing you. You should be figuring out whether that's where you want to go, whether
nice.
they are the sort of people that you want to be working with, you know, because, you know, as I said, it should be fun. And if it ain't going to be fun and it's not going to be a nice environment, then why the hell would you want to go there? It's, you know, I think we have a you know, sort of subservient view of work. You know, it's like we're applying for a job, they're interviewing us, and if they select us, well, yeah, that'd be great. But I don't know that I think it was true of my career that I occasionally got myself into places where I really didn't like where I was. And, you know, you can always blame someone else for it, but, you know, you have a fairly significant contributing factor.
Isn't that a bummer, right?
Yeah.
Something doesn't work out. Yeah. The question we've always got to, what did I do that got myself here? Yeah,
well, and it's not necessarily always your fault, but or you're not always the cause of it. But I think you've got to be able to recognise it and get out of it quick.
Because and take responsibility for your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's your life, you know. Yeah. You know, if you don't take responsibility for it, no one else is going to.
Yeah, I love this saying that that you're either going to take responsibility or you're going to take orders. So if you don't like the orders you're taking, then how about, you know, take responsibility and go, okay, I'm out of here. Yeah. This is no good.
Absolutely.
So looking ahead for you in the technology, materials, and the work that you've mainly been involved in, some of the work that you've evolved with around automation and, you know, new composites, what do you think are the trends that you believe will be most significant that will impact the industry in construction and precasting in the next 10 years? What do you think people need to be awake to?
Well, I'm actually hopeful that AI might actually change the way that some things happen. I don't think we're at that point yet, but you may have heard me say it in the past. But for someone who has been associated with the construction industry, and, you know, my initial upbringing and a lot of my early training was in manufacturing industry. You know, construction is the biggest manufacturing industry in the world, and yet it's completely based on a false premise. You know, you would never try to build an aeroplane or a car the way that people try to build buildings.
So say more about that, because I think that's really interesting.
Well,
because it's all piecemeally weird things.
Well, the construction industry is based on a culture of nastiness and cheapest price, moving responsibility, shifting blame, you know, and shifting responsibility and shifting who pays the price for mistakes. Whereas, you know, the car building industry, the appliance industry, the aircraft industry, they're all built on partnerships and shared values and shared contribution and shared responsibility.
Wow, what an opportunity we're sitting on. Let's go change the construction industry, folks.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, but, you know, maybe by, you know, the introduction of AI and by having some better level of intelligence making decisions, that we will see some improvement in you know, there are examples of construction projects that have been run cooperatively with shared responsibility and, you know, different experts, you know, working with each other rather than working against each other. But unfortunately, certainly in this country and in the US, that's not the way it works at the moment. It's dispute who can shout the loudest, who's got the money the first, because passing the blame down the line, usually to the person that has the least amount of money and the least of capacity to absorb mistakes. But that's the way the industry works. And
so it's cutthroat.
Very, very cutthroat, and totally price driven. There's no, they all want quality
for nothing,
but nobody's prepared to pay for it. When it comes down to who's going to win the tender, it's the cheapest price. And they don't even make real in many of the construction companies, and the larger ones are maybe a tiny little bit better, but not very much. But many of the construction companies make decisions based purely on the dollar on the page, and they make all kinds of assumptions that are not correct. They don't even bother to check whether the price that they've been quoted complies with the tender documents that they put out. And then the disputes are left to the end. So when something goes wrong, everybody's pointing the finger everywhere else, and it's who's got the best lawyers. And if you look at the big construction companies, you find they have very, very large legal departments.
Yes. So it's interesting, like the construction industry needs a checkup from the neck up.
Yep.
And they need to clean up their act.
Yep. Absolutely. And
because
and it's costing us all.
Well, buildings cost more because there's too many mistakes made.
Yep. That's exactly right.
I mean, I see it in the buildings that are going up around me in suburban, big high rises, and I go, this has gone up really fast. And I've got clients that are servicing those buildings, and they go, it's always the cheapest price, Jennifer.
Yep. Well, and it's frequently the tenants, the owners of those buildings, down the track that end up paying for the poor quality. The amount of water ingress problems in new construction in Melbourne, I don't know about other parts of the country, but I think it's probably the same. But certainly in Melbourne, for pretty much all of the high-rise buildings in Melbourne, they've got serious water ingress problems, really, really serious waterproofing problems. The buildings aren't watertight. There's only one reason for that. It's because the job hasn't been done properly, or a combination of it wasn't designed properly and then it wasn't done properly. It's unfortunate that that's the reality.
So a checkup from the neck up for the construction industry, and maybe you could spearhead it.
Getting too old for that.
I know you're going to be around for a long time still.
I hope so.
So maybe I read, what's his name, Caruso. I think it's John Caruso's book, The Infinite Game. And what he talks about, so Simon Sinek did this whole heap of stuff about start with wire and the long game and the short game and the infinite game and and the finite game. But the work was actually researched by a guy called John Caruso, and he wrote a book called The Infinite Game. And when you talk about purpose, it's all about that infinite game, the game that keeps going because you're really clear about what you're in business for and what you're doing in there.
Yeah, some people call it objectives.
Yes.
To me, objectives is, maybe a little bit more restrained or more narrow. Whereas purpose is about, this is what we're trying to achieve. It doesn't necessarily have a set of numbers around it. You can say our objective is to grow the profitability of the business, or our purpose is to grow the profitability of the business. Well, if it's the purpose, then you never get there. You've got to keep driving because that's the purpose. If it's an objective is to grow the profit of the business by 20%, once you get to 20%,
now what?
It's like, well, now you've lost the purpose or you've lost the objective. You've got to create a new one. So purpose is much more, to me, it's much more about the underlying drive, direction, what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And objectives are the stepping stones along the way to.
So it's
to
the
help you to
infinite
get there.
game.
Yeah.
That thing about we're here to stay in business, and to do that we grow it, and we do this and we do that and we do the other thing.
I mean, it can be, there can be lots and lots of different purposes. If it's a privately owned business, the purpose might be to get the business to the point where I can hand it over to my my children, or it might, and if that's the purpose, you have to be thinking about both sides, because you have to be thinking about the business, but you also have to be thinking about the children, because when you get there, they got to want to take it. Otherwise, you're not going to achieve your purpose, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be only about the business. In the same environment, the purpose might be, well, I know that I don't have anyone that wants to take this business over, and I don't have any heirs or whatever. And the purpose is to get to at a point in time where I can exit the business, but the business can go on.
So talk about how values support purpose.
Well, values create the culture around, how the business operates, and how people deal with each other, and how they deal with customers, and all of those sorts of things. And so values are the means of collecting the right people, operating in the right methodologies, and with the right levels of integrity, or whatever is the values that you want to put on it, and they help you to achieve the purpose. I mean, you could say the mafia has a set of values, and they have a particular purpose, and the way they gain it is through fear and bullying and so on. And
if that's what you want to do, well, okay.
Well, maybe it works for them, maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but that's not as an individual. If you see the values of a company, and you see the values and the culture of the business, you can make a reasonable decision about whether that fits with the way you want to live your life. Whether you want to be involved in that, and clearly there are people around for whatever reason want to be involved in a mafia style life and criminal life, and that's the decision they make. And it's not necessarily the decision I would make, or it's not how I want to live my life. But it's values is about how you get there. Purpose is about what you're trying to get there, why you're trying to do it. Values is about how. Purpose is about.
Yeah, so for me, I hear it's all about the supporting structure to support where you're going, what you're doing, and how you move forward.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, it's how you do it. It's how do you treat your customers? Are your customers important, or are they just a means of making money, and you just want to get their money and give them as little service as possible? I mean, all of those things are driven by value. They're all driven by the values and the integrity that you and your team have.
And without it, people will either enjoy buying off you, or they'll feel used.
Yeah.
So do you want people to feel used, or do you want to add value?
Well, I think that Elon Musk is finding that out for himself right now.
Yes. In wrapping up, I just love that last piece that we just talked about. It's like your contribution to the construction industry and leadership and people, and then looking to the future and saying, hey, I'm leaving you with clean this up. So Bob, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for coming in. It's terrific to speak to people that have been there, done that. And you can't put a wise head on young shoulders.
You can build one, but you can put one there.
Yeah, you can't just put it there. Thank you.